So a couple of months ago, Rebel Wisdom posted a couple of interviews that they did with my friend Jesse and me, and we recorded these, I think, late last summer. Actually, David and Allie came out to San Francisco and met Jesse and I at CIIS, and we recorded there. And it was great to meet them and to talk a little bit. I feel like we didn't really move the ball forward in terms of, the political left and political right understanding each other better or starting a new kind of dialogue. I mean, maybe for a few people, but looking at the comments, it feels pretty polarized to me. There were a few people, though, that I did enjoy dialoguing with. One in particular is a guy named Matthew Perkowski, and I engaged with him a little bit earlier today on Twitter, just around how best to interpret post-structural philosophy, Gilles Deleuze in particular, and what value he might be in our political moment, and what some of his shortcomings might be. And in the comment thread on the Rebel Wisdom interview, Matthew and I were also talking about capitalism and spiral dynamics, which is this understanding of the evolution of human consciousness as it moves through various stages. I guess spiral dynamics is a particular school of thought that looks at the evolution of consciousness through stages. This really comes out of the work of the 20th century Swiss cultural phenomenologist Jean Gebser. Sri Aurobindo's got to be in there too. You could even throw Teilhard de Chardin into the mix, and of course Ken Wilber more recently, and other psychologists and sociologists and researchers have contributed to this notion. And Matthew and I were trying to place what goes under the name of the mean green meme. Ken Wilber referred to it that way. Trying to understand its role in our culture, its prevalence in the United States. I had made a comment that most people are not yet at that green or postmodern level of development, that the United States was predominantly orange, which is the individual striving phase of consciousness. It's very much associated with libertarianism and with free market capitalism. And it seems to me that that's the cultural center of gravity in the United States. Rather, I should say the economic center of gravity. Culturally, it's true, the United States really has developed a strong green popular culture, right? In the media, the mainstream media, and Hollywood, major movies, all generally pervade this green mentality. And, the question for me, and I think for Matthew and many others who are involved in and who have studied integral thought, is, not how do we eliminate orange, or how do we eliminate green, or even how we eliminate red, like that more mythic tribal sort of consciousness that possesses fundamentalists of various stripes. The goal is not to eliminate any, but to find out how they can support one another, and so that we can recognize the full human suite of faculties and capacities and modes of orientation. A couple of people in the comments on the Rebel Wisdom video made fun of us talking about chakras, as they put it. Because, we're using this color scheme and it can sound a little new agey, but, these aren't chakras. These are richly described cultural structures and psychological structures, individual and social paradigms, you could say, that repeat themselves at multiple levels, right? The individual moves through these stages in their own ontogenesis, and societies move through these stages historically. So, this isn't just woo-woo New Age spirituality. It's, I would say serious, rigorous sociology and phenomenology and science. And the question is, how do we integrate these various parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that are individualistic and that strive to be the best, to lift ourselves above the pack, the crowd. Nobody wants to be a mass man or woman, right? We want to stand out. But there are other parts of our being that want to relate, that want to come into community, that want to have intimate contact with others. And, we want to play, right? We don't just want to work. And yet, in our striving, we want to build better and better playgrounds. Politically right now, I think we're in the midst of a phase transition where, I can put it this way, no one really that I'm familiar with and enter into dialogue with on a day-to-day basis takes the Republican or the Democratic Party machine seriously. The corporate duopoly no longer has the legitimacy that's going to be necessary to govern the United States. And if the United States government cannot accept that, if the Democrats and Republicans currently in control of the United States government cannot accept that, then I worry that there won't be a federal government capable of governing, right? So there's going to need to be a handoff of power. There's going to need to be a people's revolution in some sense, so that we can move beyond the corporate stranglehold. And I might disagree with people like Matthew about what the biggest problem in our moment is as a species right now. I think climate change is up there, but capitalism for me isn't something separate from the state. So if I support, if I'm against capitalism, say, it doesn't mean that I therefore support the state. On the other hand, I don't know of any other tools right now that we have as individuals and communities to combat or push back against the power of transnational corporations than states. We have to use the laws and the lawmaking capacity of states to take power back from these transnational corporate entities that are, for all intents and purposes, governing the world. Right now we do have a world government. It's a democracy of corporations. It's not a democracy of nation states, right? It's the defense contractors that stand to benefit from the wars that any nations or non-nation state-based actors engage in. They need weapons from these contractors, and so it's those corporations that are deciding when we go to war. It's those corporations that are deciding whether or not we're going to respond to climate change. And there needs to be a shift in the balance of power away from capital towards people, right? And so I have a lot of sympathy for the localist movement, but to my mind, localism cannot succeed unless global capitalism is challenged, if the legal basis of its operation is challenged. And other than the, we hope, democratic institutions that give rise to our government in countries like the United States, I'm not sure how we can tip that seesaw back in the direction of individual people. The corporations have bought all the politicians out in both major parties, right? So we need an electoral wave. And barring that, we're going to need a lot of direct action. In other words, to do all the things that we've gotten used to the federal government doing for us at a more local level, which is probably good either way. Because if I support something like a Green New Deal, it's not because I want a larger federal government. And to take care of everything for us. It's because, and if you read Bill McKibben, if you read Naomi Klein, if you read social ecologists like Murray Bookchin, they're all talking about localism as the solution to global climate change. They're not talking about empowering some huge state to take control of the market. They're calling for putting the power of the marketplace back in the hands of individual people, and sure, small businesses, but worker-owned cooperative businesses where the employees can share in the success of the corporate entities that they belong to, rather than being the wage slaves of the owners of those corporations or the shareholders of those corporations. So, that's why I push back against capitalism. But it's not because I think we can just, again, surgically remove that part of ourselves that's an individual and that wants to strive. There's room for playful competition in the context of a more cooperative society. I mean, of course there is. We do want a meritocracy. We want people to continue to be the best expression of their authentic self as they can be, right? And we want to provide them with the container within which to do so. The material container, the family container, the cultural, social container, the educational container, the medical container, right? There are certain basic needs that I think need to be, in a society as wealthy as ours, need to be considered more like fundamental rights that we all have the responsibility to provide for each other. That's how I look at it. I don't want a state coercing me. I think this is how human beings want to express themselves. They want to be in a society where we all take care of each other. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say about that. And I hope that Matthew and I can arrange a time to chat face-to-face or over these video circuits. Thanks for listening.